In this example, we're going to use the fact that similar triangles are proportional to determine the missing sides of these two triangles. So first, just notice this problem has been slightly altered from the workbook. So if you purchased the workbook or if you printed this online, one of the numbers is going to be different, namely this one right here. So if you could just scratch out the number that was there and replace it with 36.4. So let's read the question. Use the similar triangles process to determine the length of the missing sides. You may need to redraw your triangles to set up the proportions correctly. And then there's a note here that says triangle ABC is proportional to triangle DEF. That means that these two triangles, ABC and DEF, are similar triangles. So notice these letters were also not in your packet, they were added, so you want to label them just as you see them, and what you call the points matter. So this is A, B, C, D, E, F. And when it says that ABC is proportional to D, E, F, that means A corresponds to D. I'm just going to highlight this. Corresponds to D. B corresponds to E. And C corresponds to F. Oops. Let's make that a different color, light pink. Okay. So like the direction said, we could redraw these just so we can see how they correspond. So maybe you can see, since these two match up, these two match up, and these two match up, you could think about flipping this side, the D side, with respect to this line right here, this side, and then they would look more similar. They are similar anyway, but you could see how they correspond more easily. So I'm just going to flip this and make this D, this is E, and this is F. And now I'm going to make sure that I have the sides labeled properly. So notice DF right here is 7.3, and the side DE is 8.6. And this side is unknown, which is Y. Okay. So now we can use the information, so I'm just going to focus on this triangle and this rewritten triangle. So now it's easier to see that X corresponds to 8.6, 23.5 corresponds to 7.3, those sides, and the length of 36.4 is going to correspond to the length of side Y. So now we're ready to set up our first proportion. So notice that in these two triangles, these two sides, one of the values is missing, and for these corresponding sides, one of the values is missing. But for these two sides, we know both of the values. So we need to use these, or else we'd have a proportion with two unknowns. So I'm going to start with this. Let's call this triangle 1 and this triangle 2. So I'm going to start with triangle 1 is going to go on top. Triangle 1, and we'll put triangle 2 on the bottom. So 23.5 over 7.3. And now on the other side of the proportion, for the other ratio, I'm going to need corresponding sides. The top one needs to be triangle 1. So I'm going to go to triangle 1, and let's find X first. So I'm going to put X on top. And now I need the corresponding side in triangle 2. So I can't just pick any side. I need the side that corresponds to X, which is 8.6. Now we can solve this proportion by cross multiplying. So 7.3 times X equals 23.5 times 8.6. I'm going to do all the computations on the calculator at the end, so right now I'm just going to divide by 7.3 to get 1x by itself. Notice this cancels, so x is equal to this computation. So let's do this on the calculator. 23.5 times 8.6 divided by 7.3 equals this. So now it didn't say what to round it to, but since all of the decimals that we had in the problem thus far were 1 decimal place, that's what I'm going to use here. So here's the tenths, the hundredths is 8, so I'm going to round up to 27.7. So x equals 27.7. So we found one side of the triangle, and I'm just going to label this up here, 27.7. Now we still need to find y, so I'm going to put a line here, and we're going to set up the proportion in a similar way. We can still use these two sides, but now we'll need to use the side that has the y, the other unknown value, and its corresponding 36.4. So we could use now that we have 27.7, we could use that if we want to, but I'm just going to use these numbers we already have. So 23.5 is to 7.3 as, so 23.5 was over here. We want to find y, which corresponds to this. So I'm going to use 36.4 is to y. Now we could use the same cross-multiplying process. 23.5 times y equals 36.4 times 7.3. Now I'm going to divide both sides by 23.5. And we'll have, that cancels, y equals 36.4 times 7.3 divided by 23.5. And now let's use the calculator to approximate this. So we have 36.4 times 7.3 divided by 23.5. And we get approximately, I'll use the tens place again, that's 0, so 11.3. Y equals 11.3. And I'm going to box that answer, and I'm going to put that right here. So now we found both of the missing sides of the triangles.